What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. We are currently in a real bad run of form. I'm gutted that Chelsea have slipped off in the way that we have, because it was all looking so exciting. We were looking like a team that were really capable of potentially running Liverpool close. We didn't have to look over our shoulders at all. And then all of a sudden, game after game, week after week in this festive period, I feel like we've looked over our shoulder a little bit more. Newcastle are definitely closing the gap. Manchester City now are looking like a team that are in much better form than Chelsea, and obviously have a fantastic group of players, as we're all well aware, and a fantastic manager. And I'm starting to feel like 2 points, by the time we get around to that Manchester City game, they could be in front of us. They really could be. If not, it would be that game, because things aren't looking bright for Chelsea at the moment. I'm concerned as to how far off we really have been. I remember hearing, actually, just before the festive period started, someone said, if you look at Chelsea's fixtures, by the time they get to January, like New Year's, they could easily be top of the table. If Liverpool were to drop some points here and there, like the difference, like that just has not happened. And all right, people are entitled to their own opinion, but I actually think when you look at the fixtures, Chelsea should have handled them with more ease than we have, and they've been real banana skins. And I know we use that phrase a fair bit at the moment with Chelsea, but they really have been difficult games for Chelsea. And the Crystal Palace one, look, I think we knew that would be a tough game, because I look at the games that we've had this season where we've not been fantastic, where we've not been at it. And for me, Palace, very early on in the season, caused Chelsea some issues. And the way Glasner spoke in the press conference beforehand, that sort of said to me that this is a manager who's well aware of maybe not how he's going to get his victory, but how he might get something from this game. And it turned out to be the exact case. And I think first half, actually, you could probably get away with how Chelsea played. I think we were okay. We were in a good position. We had a number of opportunities that I don't think were taken. Good opportunities. I think Sancho looked electric. Obviously, Cole Palmer got his goal, which is becoming an absolute guarantee at the moment for Chelsea. If it wasn't for him, Chelsea might not have been able to pick up draws in some of these matches. He's obviously a fantastic player for Chelsea, but I don't think his ability and his output is enough for Maresca to build a team around him at this moment in time. So that's something that I think is a bit of a cause for concern, because for me, if a player is as good as Cole Palmer, you absolutely build a team around him. You get him in his most favourable position, his most effective position, 90% of the game if possible. Look, if it becomes a little bit predictable, then fine, you can change it up a bit or allow him to have a little bit more freedom to enhance his creativity. But I don't... Look, Cole Palmer's been fantastic this season, but off the bat, I don't think anyone would say Maresca is absolutely getting the best out of Cole Palmer. I just don't think they would. I think he's been fantastic. He scored some really good goals, but for the majority of the game, I feel like he's actually being pretty limited in this system, and it's just because of how brilliant he is that he's managing to still put up numbers. We are incredibly concerning at times defensively, and at times going forwards against low blocks. Now, if you look at that second half, Crystal Palace got players in between Chelsea's lines. They played very narrow. They made it very difficult for our midfielders to get on the ball in our own half, because they pressed really well. And then when they were up defending closer to their own goal, they got back in huge numbers. They had 10 people behind the ball pretty much at most of the time when they were defending on their own 18-yard line or on their own 18-yard box. And Chelsea looked like they couldn't break down a low block. And how many times have we had that discussion about a Chelsea side in recent times? And again, it looked like we were sort of lost for ideas. And I think that's the thing with these systems, is that sometimes when they are so robotic and you have to maneuver the ball in such a way that just becomes a pattern and a repeat process, like what Maresca wants, like what a number of systematic managers want, that when that isn't working, if the manager doesn't have a backup, all of a sudden the players have lost any creative spark. They don't want to go against what the manager's asked. And actually, these teams look like they're not able to score goals. And I think in the second half, it's a mixture of that. Maresca not freshening things up. We're conceding a lot of late goals at the moment, and he doesn't trust his squad. And we're also not able to score the opportunities that we should be scoring earlier on in the game. I look at Nicholas Jackson. Form's fallen off a cliff. Since he scored that goal against Aston Villa, he has really, really, really struggled to get himself into the form that we've seen at the earlier parts of this season. Maximum Potential says Van Dijk single-handedly carrying Liverpool defence since 2018. Kaneo says, I don't know what's worse, 5 goals conceded in 4 or 2 goals conceded in 4. Yeah, I'm not sure either, to be honest. But look, what I will say is, right now, off of what I've seen this season, because I've seen evidence under Maresca, I'm still backing him to turn this around. And I think we have to be a little bit more patient. I think what we should expect as fans is the Chelsea board to realise that there are a couple of deficiencies in this squad still. And yes, they've spent a lot of money, but ultimately, the money they've spent probably hasn't been spent wisely enough. And there are big concerns around a number of areas in Chelsea's squad. And I think defensively, with injuries and around the pitch, relying on players who have got issues with their injury record is a mistake from the get-go. I don't think you can rely or have at least 3, if not more, players in your squad that are considered very good and potential starters if they can't stay fit and they can't rely on their own bodies and they can't be trusted to be able to perform for Chelsea. I think that's a real concern for me. And I think ultimately I look at players like Lavia, who looks fantastic but can't stay fit. I know he's back training, but again, I look at Reece James, a fantastic player, more assists than Trent Alexander-Arnold in the past few seasons, and he's barely played a game. It's kind of concerning for me that I think I saw a stat today that said Trent has got 7 or 9 assists in his last 74 games. Reece in his last 74 games is above that. So look, Reece is a fantastic player. Can't stay fit. Can't rely on him. He said he'd get minutes, and then all of a sudden he doesn't get minutes. Does that mean there's an injury reoccurrence? Does that mean he doesn't trust him? I'm not sure. I look at Wesley Fofana, another centre-back that arguably would be starting pretty much every game if available for Chelsea. Cannot stay fit. And their issues. And then I look at quality. Robert Sanchez. I think he plays a massive part in Chelsea conceding for me. I think defensively, look, Josh had a great game. Levi, questionable. I think Levi can be a fantastic player, but I think he's still developing. And right now, I don't think he's reliable enough on his own to carry a back four in the same sense that someone like Virgil van Dijk might be able to do with a rotating defence around him. And for me, that's an issue. I look at Malo Gusto. I feel like he is a player that we really haven't seen the best of since Pochettino left. I think he suited Pochettino's style of football more so than Maresca. I think at times Maresca's played Pochettino in a way, played Gusto in a way that I just don't think brings the best out of him. And it's not the only player in the squad that I feel like this system doesn't get the best out of at times, because at times we've been very good as well. But yeah, there's a number of issues, and I think Jackson now as well is probably showing that his drop-off in form means we do require another striker, and probably one that is considered a level above Nicholas Jackson. So it's concerning. I don't think all of that happens in January, but at the same time, with this squad, Chelsea have been able to get better results than what we're currently doing. So I think it's a bit of both. I think the players are falling off a little bit, but I do think Maresca himself is making mistakes in terms of how he's setting up the team. I think there's sometimes too much from Maresca in terms of wanting his players to do a little bit more than they really need to do and trying to create that overload in certain areas, when sometimes I think, actually, if you keep this simple, we sometimes look a little bit more effective. John, I don't disagree, and I think I've said this on a number of different panel shows, is that if we've spent the money that we have and we've employed the amount of managers that we've done so, if it doesn't work out again and we get to the end of the season, whatever happens, and Chelsea have fallen below expectations, ultimately, for me, this falls on the sporting directors more than Maresca, more than the players, because simply the sporting directors have been put in to create a project that is good enough for Chelsea to return to where they should be at and challenge for trophies and titles. And ultimately, they wouldn't have done that, and a lot of money would have been spent, and a lot of adjustments would have been made in a very erratic period. I just don't think they would have done enough. And for me, that would be where the pressure would lie. I think it would probably see that Maresca may not be good enough if we fail or fall below expectations. And also, if Maresca does enough, but the players are letting him down, then I think it would be viewed that a lot of money's been spent on this talent and it probably isn't good enough. So, yeah, real concern for me in terms of the squad building aspect for Chelsea if things don't turn a corner. Dan says, I can't blame the manager anymore if we don't get top 4. I think it's a mixture because I don't think Maresca's innocent. I think I look at where Chelsea are conceding goals from. This season, I feel like Chelsea have conceded a lot of goals late on, more than we should be. But then I look at Maresca. When's he making his substitutions? Is he giving them enough time? No. Is he making enough substitutions? Probably not. I think over this festive period where it gets really, really full with fixtures, you get 3 days to recover in some fixtures. The rotation, I mean, at times he's made the rotation that hasn't been good enough, but also in terms of using and utilising his substitutes, I don't think he's done a good enough job. And I think most Chelsea fans would agree with that. And that's concerning. I also think certain things in our build-up are really starting to frustrate me. I think there's a massive issue here, and I want to get to this quickly because I think congested, that is the word, John. That's exactly what I was looking for. I think the consistent approach to playing Robert Sanchez in goal, look, I think this has got to end. I think you are, as a manager, making a big mistake playing this guy every single week because I think it's leading to mistakes. Yes, I think at times he saved Chelsea, but 90% of the time, I genuinely think it has to actually be on Maresca's head that he's picking Sanchez. I'm going to jump to this straight away, right, because I want to show you guys quickly. If you haven't already, whilst I'm just changing over, drop a like on the video. We'll try and get 30 likes, 40 likes. That's what we try and do. If you haven't as well, make sure to subscribe because I think, honestly, the numbers is like 69% of people who watch this content aren't actually subscribed. So we're on the road to 5,000 this year in 2025. So try and make it happen. Let's bring this up. Bear with me 2 seconds. Here we go. Right. So this is 81st minute of the game. This is where it goes wrong for Chelsea. Because look, as much as we haven't been fantastic in this game, actually, we are in the game, right? We're in the game. We're winning 1-0. We're probably going to take 3 points in a tricky away game against Crystal Palace. So you sort of have to manage what you do in a situation. And for me, obviously I can't show it, but I'll clip through the scenes. Sanchez receives the ball from Gusto here on the 81st minute. You can quite clearly see he's got Josh to his right, Levi to his left, Gusto occupying the right-hand side, Cucurella in acres of space out on the left. Where are all the Crystal Palace players? Well, they're directly in the middle of what is Chelsea's midfield and defensive lines. They're making that really compact, really, really tight. Let's look at where Sanchez looks to play the ball. He arguably picks one of the most tightest lines of pass you can find in this moment. He goes straight in between Sarr and Lerma. I'm going to try and bear with me. Oh. Bang. He plays the ball into Cole Palmer in an area that is already occupied by 2 players. And that, for me, it's just, in that moment, is just not the right pass. I think that's Sanchez making a mistake. But at the same time, there's kind of a long way to go. Cole Palmer actually gets on the ball, turns, but he turns straight into traffic, straight into an issue. He could have passed that ball to Cucurella in acres of space, and I don't think that line was blocked by Sarr that Cucurella could have received the ball. I actually think Sanchez has a good enough passing range to find Cucurella in that moment in way more space, right? Palmer turns, obviously loses the ball, but this is where the issue is. Sarr, I believe, is obviously in behind Casado. Like, you can see Sarr, it's hard to do. I don't know if you can see my cursor. I'm not sure that you can. No, you can't, which is annoying. But Sarr is this Crystal Palace player just to the right, obviously a few yards ahead of Levi Colwill. Now, as soon as this ball gets overturned, watch, loses the ball. It just jumps way too much. Bear with me. I obviously can't show the highlight, which is really frustrating. But I will just play it forward a little bit and bring it back. Lose the ball. One sec. Bang. Right. Okay, so Levi Colwill recognises the danger, comes flying out of the back line because the pass, obviously, from Palace just bypasses Casado in the middle there, right? This is where I think inexperience comes in with someone like Levi Colwill. He sees the danger of Sarr getting on the ball in this situation, but he isn't aware of how important the space in behind him is if he vacates that for someone like Mateta to get into. And I also don't think at this moment in time he's aware of the distance between him and Cucurella, that Cucurella probably won't be able to recover this gap in time to prevent the pass going there, therefore leading to Mateta probably receiving the ball in a dangerous area, or someone in that space getting on the ball in a dangerous area, right? I think Levi's just gone, the danger's there, I've got to stop it, it's late on in the game. But you can't do that if you don't have players around you vacate that space. Now, Cucurella actually, I'll jump ahead, actually does fantastic. You can manage, if Sarr gets on the ball, I think Chelsea in this situation can prevent Palace from getting a shot inside the box. I genuinely think they can. I think they can do enough delay in here that Palace would probably be forced to either go in for a corner or getting a shot off from outside the box. But as soon as Levi vacates that space, you've got to look, right? I'll have to hide it again, but I'm going to bring it back up. Levi vacates the space. Sarr obviously plays the ball out to Eze, but if you look at Josh, he's had to try and move back out towards where Levi came from, and Cucurella is in a desperate chase, right? That's really important, because if Levi hadn't gone forwards there and Sarr had got the ball, Josh would then be able to deal with where Eze is. Gusto's somewhere in the picture, but you can't see him. That means his positioning is off, right? Now, let's see. I'm going to move it forward a little bit more because you will see why this is an issue. Levi ends up he's in no man's land now because the pass has taken him out of the game. Our best centre-back is out of the box when you need him most, which is, that means something's gone wrong, right? There's Gusto, appears in the picture, in the frame. Eze's got goal side of him. Now, for me, actually, I think Eze probably should just take this chance, score himself. He's good enough to. Look, by the way, look at where Sanchez's momentum is. Sanchez's momentum is taking him to his left-hand side already, by the way. Feet aren't planted. He can't move instantly now. This is poor keeping. His feet should be planted. As soon as he sees that pass played to Eze, he should be ready to react. In looking at his body shape and his momentum right there, he's not. He is just not ready to. Cucurella, obviously on the far side, is not making up the distance to Mateta. If Levi had just stayed there, this removes Mateta from, like, he cannot get open in this space. And the same with Eze. I think Josh would be able to get out to Eze rather than have to shift over to where Levi went. So for me, this is just a little bit chaotic. And I think this happens with an inexperienced defence. And then, obviously, Eze, the ball goes onto his left foot. And then really calmly, and this is where I have to commend Eze, because he could have gone for goal. And he just was so aware of that space that Levi Colwill vacated, still being vacant. Plays the ball into there. He knows Mateta's run. It's unbelievable awareness. It really is. And he obviously plays the ball into Mateta's feet. And Palace get their goal. And for me, that is such a preventable situation with a more experienced defence. And that's the sort of situation where I've said time and time again that you just need a little bit more experience. You either need a keeper that shouts at Levi and tells him not to go. You need a keeper that doesn't play a hospital. Because for me, that pass into Cole Palmer, it's a bit of a hospital pass. You need a keeper that doesn't play that in that moment of the game. Look, if you play that half an hour in and Palmer turns and he clears Palace's press and there's a counter-attack, fair enough. But 80 minutes in, defending a 1-0 lead, when you probably don't have the momentum to really guarantee going on to win that game. Risky business playing that pass. And it turned out to be a risk that just wasn't worth playing out from the back from. And I think ultimately that is where people get so frustrated, is because you just need to be a little bit pragmatic. You play out from the back, it's worth it in some situations. But sometimes, honestly, it is just not worth the hassle. And this is one of those situations. Chelsea lose 2 points. And minutes before Sanchez played that pass, look, as out of form as Nicholas Jackson is, he'd just been taken off for Mark Gee. And Chelsea really didn't leave enough firepower on the pitch for this. And obviously Sanchez is, if you look at Sanchez's body language, I wish you could see the full flowing clip, but it was not body language, sorry, body shape and his momentum. It was all over the place in this moment, and it really was concerning. And the defence just looked to that space that's vacated by Levi. Levi just about gets back into the penalty area by the time Mateta scores, and it's just too little, too late. And I feel for Levi because he's trying to be proactive and trying to stop it all, but he's rushed out to press and he's vacated a really important area. And I think Sarr is far less dangerous where he gets on the ball and is allowed to turn than actually with Levi in his correct position, than Levi being sucked out to a player that he's never going to get close to. That makes the situation and puts Chelsea in a way more vulnerable position. Now, there are things you can learn, but ultimately I don't think they're ever going to change until more experienced players come in to educate the younger players in these moments, or the coaches really, really educate them away from the pitch and on the training field, or the manager switches it up a little bit and says, look, I love the way we play 80% of the time, but in some moments it's not worth increasing our vulnerability. And that just didn't happen. And we've conceded there. Look, consistently picking Sanchez is a concern for me, and it's a mistake that Maresca keeps making week in, week out. I'm not saying Chelsea have a good enough goalkeeper at the club at this moment in time, but I do think maybe other goalkeepers don't allow this many don't cause this many incidents of lacking concentration, if you like. Something along those sort of lines is what I'm looking for. Anyway, disastrous, really, for Chelsea. If I just skip it one more, you obviously see the ball in the back of the net. One sec. What I will say, just looking back at that, Sanchez actually pushes off on that save. When you saw the clip just before, his momentum's going completely the other way. He pushes off on that save and covers quite a lot of ground. Athletically, this guy actually is fantastic. And I think if he'd have been coached to be just an absolute shot stopper and remove the risk element of his game a little bit, I think he'd actually be a really good keeper. But there's obviously a concentration issue that hasn't been sorted out, and he's probably too old to get away from that now in terms of his playing career, because that's something you need to sort out in the early to like pre-20s. He's now 27. I think it's a little bit too late, unless he can work on that in the next 3 years of his career. He probably isn't going to have many seasons without that being part of his game. But let's talk about, and we'll come away from this because we all know what happens. We didn't have enough for the last 10 minutes, and we ultimately didn't get a win and it's another 2 points drop, which is really disappointing. But let's go back to just having a little chat and see what you guys have got to say as well. But yeah, these clips, that is torturous. I agree. It's actually really frustrating to see that that's how we've gone about it in a really difficult fixture. We're still making those mistakes. We were cut when Sarr got the ball to his maximum potential. I'm not sure. I think we actually could have done a little bit more. I think Sarr getting on the ball with the defenders in their correct positions, I don't think the opportunity is taken that easily for Palace, to be fair. Owner's strategy and model when the club bought should have been complete and win now and get top manager down top ready. Get players in the spine, but show no clear ambition. Look, I think there is an element of doubt that, for me, still hasn't been removed by the people making very, very important decisions at the top of this club. Because I just think with the amount of money that's been spent, where Chelsea were at when the purchase of the club or the takeover of the club happened to now, we've regressed quite a lot. And I just don't think that should have ever been the case. And I really don't think that the blueprint that was already there in place had as many issues as what's being made out. And also, I'm not sure whether the club needed to be gutted with certain backroom staff and people that were part of Cobham to the extent that it was, and the playing squad to be hollowed out to the extent that it was, and the academy to just completely change to the extent that it was. But at the same time, that's all happened. And what's going on the pitch now can be rectified, I think, actually with relative ease. And I think we've really gone the long way round. But we've already seen at points this season, this Chelsea squad is capable of playing better football than this. So yeah, look, the ambition, I think, is there. I actually think the owners are ambitious. I just think they want to do it in a completely different way, which doesn't make sense to a lot of us Chelsea fans, because it's like, no, we're ambitious as fans. We know what it takes to win. This probably isn't the quickest way to success if you're ambitious, but they're obviously trying to build something for a more sustainable, longer period of time. We're yet to see if that's going to work out, by the way. We really don't know. Or is there enough evidence? No. Casado and Enzo Fernandez going to get burnt out and pick up. Yeah, Dan, look, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I actually think if Casado may go as well. Dewsbury Hall's being linked with a transfer this January. So is Chukwuemeka. I think if three midfielders leave and Lavia cannot be trusted to be 100% fit at the times when he's required to be, I think there's a shout here for a midfield arrival to the club. I think we already have our answer in Andre Santos. And I think, look, if we can make that happen and he could be recalled, I think that would be a wise decision. I think this looks like a kid that could be ready. I've seen him improve in the small amount of time that he's been at Mo. Good to see you in here. It's actually, that's true, Mo. We need to make you a mod. There we go. There you go. Yeah. So I honestly think it's a confusing period of time, but for me, there's room for Andre Santos to be added to this midfield if players do depart Chelsea this summer, especially when I see how confusing Dewsbury Hall is as a signing. That just doesn't make sense to me. The fact that Chukwuemeka looks like he's got no future at Chelsea. Mo, I think we need experience. We could probably get experience in other areas and probably cope. But I do think Mo is bang on there, by the way, that for me, areas of experience I think would be crucial for Chelsea are a central defender, a goalkeeper, a striker, and this one some of you won't like, but I actually think a manager. I think an experienced manager with a young group of kids would be putting Chelsea in a far more advantageous position for the next 10 years, because I think these players would learn. They're still impressionable at the age that they're at, right? And I think they'd learn a lot. And I look back to the squad that Jose Mourinho first took over, and that squad was very similar average age, very young. So, okay, a couple of players that were a bit older, but I honestly think that the majority of those players were a very similar age, very impressionable. They learned a lot off of Jose Mourinho at that age, and that's an experience. A guy that had ideas that made a team winners. And okay, Jose wasn't as experienced as he ended up being after he left Chelsea, but he had won the Champions League and the UEFA Cup. I just think there's something to be said about young players learning off an experienced manager, or a manager that can create a real sort of spine in the team that can be left for years to come and still go on to win stuff. I look at Ferguson. He absolutely influenced his class of 92. All right, football's changed, but players at that age are more impressionable. So for me, look, I'm not sitting here saying Maresca needs to go, but I did question at the time, did Maresca ever need to be hired? I still don't know whether that was the right approach or not. I think he's done well. I think he's done better than I expected him to do so far. But I just think for a young group of players, they don't need to be managed by an inexperienced manager at the same time, right? Maresca now isn't as experienced as Mourinho. Exactly, Mo, right? He isn't, and he's not won nearly as much as what Mourinho had won at that time, because Mourinho had obviously won stuff in Portugal, won the UEFA Cup, beaten a very good Celtic side in that. He then went on to win the Champions League the next season. And Mourinho, I think, as a manager, was obviously destined for the very, very top as well. You agree that Maresca isn't tactically fit for the job? I wouldn't say that. No, I think we've seen that Maresca tactically has been good enough. I just think for some reason he's gone away from some of the decisions that have ultimately won him games of football, rather than the things that have become a bit of an issue. We're becoming Cole Palmer FC again. Currently, when the form disappears of some players, now Poch wasn't the answer, John. You're right. We're becoming Cole Palmer FC again is a phrase that I really hate, but it's evident at the moment we're reliant on his goals. And when players aren't on form and aren't capable of scoring, I look around this Chelsea team and think, I only see one player capable of scoring goals when the going gets tough, and it's him. And that's on proof that he's done it before. We just needed one more year of Poch to see. Okay, hear me out on this. I'm not saying that it should have been Poch that stayed, but what should have happened from the get-go is this team should have been moving in one direction that the sporting directors were all aligned on. They obviously weren't all aligned on the same thing. That's why we went after players like Raheem Sterling, Koulibaly, Wesley Fofana, obviously, and Kunku. These players that were considered elite players that would make the squad better instantly didn't really work out. We've then gone, no, we're going in a different direction, blah, 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 blah. These players need to be removed. We're going for younger players now. We need a younger manager. We need a manager that's cool and young and exciting and a bit different tactically. And ultimately, it's just been so volatile and there's been so much instability that it's caused a real issue for this Chelsea squad, team, ownership, everything, because no one is aware of where Chelsea currently stand, because no one has quite been given enough time to assess. Like, you can look at Arsenal over that 5 years of Arteta and start to make judgments now. It's too soon with everyone at Chelsea, because it just hasn't. When you have a project like this, you need a little bit more time, and I think at least another season of stability is going to be required, whether or not the manager is good enough or not, as long as the results are okay and they get you top four. If you're not, and you're below that level, he's going to have to go, isn't he? Which is absolutely crazy. I agree, by the way, John. I think there's a level of manager that would consider themselves above where Chelsea currently are as a sporting director and model and the way the club works. A lot of managers go, that's just not going to work for me. My CV suggests that I can do better than this, and I'm aware of a way that works better than this. So, yeah, look, that is concerning, but at the same time, we need to focus on results on the pitch and just get a bit of consistency again, get some results, and see what really needs to happen with this Chelsea team over a controlled period of time that we can look, evaluate, discuss, see what this is about, see what the squad is about, see how good these players are. Are they still developing? Are they going to be good enough? Are they good enough now? Will they ever be good enough? You need a period of stability to assess all these things. And right now, I don't know if that's going to come if results don't change. If results change and they start moving in the right direction again, then I believe that'll be there. But people are getting itchy feet that this isn't good enough. And Maresca is making mistakes that are repeat offences and he's not learning from his mistakes. And for me, that was the issue I had with Pochettino, is that he was making mistake after mistake after mistake. They weren't benefiting the team and he wasn't learning from his mistakes. And for me, that is the number one sin as a coach and as a manager, is you can experiment and you can try things, but if you're not helping the team and you're not seeing results from that, don't keep sticking with it. Otherwise, football is a sport that will not give you the time you think you're going to need to implement something like that. It's just not going to happen unless he's got the sporting director's words. But look, Enzo quietly has been one of the... Enzo's actually been pretty good, I have to say. We've obviously slated him a lot, but I think Caicedo and Enzo have been good. I actually think Enzo is a player that thrives off of the left-hand side a little bit more, in that left 8, and I actually think Cole Palmer thrives being out to the right of the pitch more, but Maresca seems to think differently to me on that. Do you think the system makes the defence worse than what it is? I don't think it helps. I'll be honest, if you're playing out from the back and you've got a young and inexperienced team and they're being constantly put under pressure, I mean, they'll learn how to defend pretty quickly, won't they, that sort of situation, because they're being put under it constantly. But at the same time, I'm not sure this a real robotic system is the right way to go. I'm just not sure that it is for any team, by the way. I think teams actually are becoming really predictable across the board, and I think they just need to be a little bit more pragmatic and a little bit more versatile in the way they play. And I think that is why someone like Arne Slot is actually thriving at the moment, and his Liverpool team is as far ahead as what it is, because in certain games when he's needed to, he's made little adjustments that have got him over the line. And I don't think other managers are capable of doing that at the moment. And I think that's something that the best and the very best managers have always put on show, that they are aware of how to tactically change a game in game and get the result they want. And I think we saw Marco Silva do that against Chelsea to get himself a win for Fulham. I think we saw Glasner switch things up a little bit against Chelsea in the second half that caused Chelsea some issues. And for me, that was a bit of a show that Maresca tactically might not be able to see what's unfolding on the pitch in front of him, and that would be a concern. It really would be, because they're traits that Pochettino had, and they're traits that I don't believe is good enough for a manager. I know what's going to happen. We're going to get back to our best from the Bournemouth game. Just subscribe to Love the Vids. Abraham, really expect that. I really hope we do. And I hope there's a blip. Sometimes you need a little blip like this. I said at the beginning of the season, I think this season could be a roller coaster. It's looking like it's going to be that way. Before the season ends, I expect Chelsea to have an upwards curve, and then that running at the end of the season is really difficult. So hopefully that is the case sooner rather than later, because the last thing this squad needs is to go for a real rut and not be able to get out of it, because I think that could be disastrous for the club. Because I think that would probably mean we wouldn't get top 4, which I think Chelsea have probably shown enough this season they're capable of getting that, and realistically the club need that. I just didn't think at the beginning of the season Maresca would be the man to do that. It's an interesting one, isn't it? It's really opened up some questions, this run of form in recent weeks. We got Morecambe, obviously. Look, Morecambe, we should be winning that game with ease. There should be some rotation. If there's an upset, I'll be very disappointed, because I said at the beginning of the season that for me, a domestic trophy, I actually think Poch would have got one this season. I actually do. I think if Poch had been left in charge, I think he would have got himself a domestic trophy, because I think he was heading that way. I think the squad was moving in that direction. So we've improved this season, haven't we? So Maresca, the way he went out of that League Cup was really disappointing. So for me, there's a little bit of pressure on Maresca to do well in the FA Cup, because I think Chelsea need a trophy away from what is a probably predictable one in the Conference League. I really think this team and this young squad need to be taught how to win and what winning feels like. And I think the FA Cup's a really good chance of doing that and creating a winning environment, as is the Conference League. And I think they would be really important games for Chelsea not to sleep on. unlike we did in the Newcastle game, which was really frustrating in the League Cup. It's Pep ball, it'll change soon. Look, John, that could be the case. I know some people are hating what Pep Guardiola has done to football. I'm not sure it's all on him. I actually think, I look at some of the sides Pep's had and they've been fantastic over the years. I actually think it's on the wannabes that are trying to be Pep, but it just doesn't work. And I think they're the ones that cause the real issue for me, that they're actually making it worse for all the other teams. I really, really think that. And football in general, to be honest, I think has probably fallen off a level. Let me see. Maresca had a blip with Leicester. Yeah, a lot of people are saying that, Kalo. Like, a lot of people are. End of the season stronger, won the league. Exactly right. So hopefully evidence is there to suggest that Maresca is a good enough coach to get his team back on track, which I would like to see. The downfall started after Lavia got injured. We don't have a fourth midfielder Maresca trusts. Maresca doesn't trust a lot of the players that could come on. That's evident to see. Let's have a look. What about the Conference League as well? No, I do. I want to win Conference League and I'd like to win a domestic trophy. I really would. Because I think that if you win the FA Cup, chances are you beat better teams than you do on the whole way to the final, winning the Conference League. If we lose some... Abraham, let's not speak that one into existence. When is the Conference League draw for Chelsea? I actually think it's been made and we can play like one of 4 teams, which includes Heidenheim, Copenhagen... Can't remember the rest, but it could be Betis and one more. There's I think it's been Genk, maybe I've said that could be it. Can't remember off the top of my head, but it's something like that. But look, let's speak transfers, because for the last few minutes I want to just discuss where we think Chelsea are at, because we've got 25 24 25 days left of the January transfer window. Do you think, say right now in the chat, and smash a like if you think Chelsea have to make signings this January? Because I'm sat here now, looking at the squad, looking at the injuries, thinking we have to be busy in January. It's quiet at the moment. I hope that means things are happening in the background. I think there will be departures. I think, I'm going to list off a few names right now. Let me know if you agree or not. I think Dewsbury Hall could potentially leave, which would be crazy if that's the amount of time that he's at the club. That would be one of the worst signings Chelsea may have ever made if that happens. I think Chukwuemeka could potentially leave. I think Cassidy could potentially leave in this window. Whether they're loan deals or transfers, I'm not entirely sure, but I think that could be the case. I also think Nkunku could be a name that leaves, and I think Nkunku is key, because if Nkunku leaves, I then think Chelsea act in terms of bringing in a forward. However, if Nkunku leaves on a loan, I don't know whether that frees up enough room or finances for Chelsea to bring someone in. And I'm not sure, other than that, I probably don't think Disasi or Badashile leave now, because of the situation defensively that was so slight. Yeah, and Nkunku's a random one, isn't it? I think we need to look at that and just sort of see what happens. But if Nkunku is to go in Jan, then I think Chelsea board act and try and bring someone in offensively as an attacker. Incomings, because this is where we have to do something. Right now, for me, we need a centre-back urgently. With Fofana's injury, with Badashile not being fit, and the quality of the defence as it is, we need a centre-back. I've said this. We should have signed an extra centre-back in the summer. However, we didn't. Now there are injuries. I think almost Chelsea need 2 centre-backs. Probably won't happen. Probably an additional one in the summer. But realistically, we need a centre-back right now. You could recall Trevor Chalobah and the numbers there. For me, the board have already decided that Trevor isn't good enough for Chelsea. They don't believe he's someone they want to be part of the project. Otherwise, he'd be sticking around. So I think they're probably pretty reluctant. I think, hear me out on this, they'd rather sell Trevor to Palace or guarantee that he goes in the summer and sign Mark Gehee. I think that's what they'd rather do. Wait, have those two got near enough the same name? Mark Gehee and Mark Gehee? Yeah, that'd be mad. I think that's potentially what this board would rather do. Now, Gehi is an interesting one for me. I don't know what level this guy is at in terms of how much better he's going to be. But I do think if he comes in, he probably becomes Chelsea's best defender. I think I'd say that comfortably. I think he'd probably be better than Fofana. I think he'd probably be and have a little bit more experience than Levi Colwill. And I think he'd be a really good addition. I think he showed in the summer at the Euros how good he can be. I think Palace have had a real mix-up of games in the first 20. Do I think, though, Marc Guéhi is the real top-level defender Chelsea should be going for? And the answer is no. I think you can do better than that. I really do. And I'll be really disappointed if the board felt like that was the level of centre-back that this defence needs. I think you can go a level better. I really do. I think there are players out there that I would test the water on. We said it the other day, and there's players like, look, I'm not saying he's fantastic, by the way, and I think there's obviously been a bit of a downturn in how good he's been, but players like Skriniar at PSG are obviously really, really highly rated once upon a time. He now doesn't want to be there. Is that not an addition that could be worth making to the squad? I'm not saying it's perfect, but he's obviously got some real good experience. He's been at top level teams. Players like that, potentially they're a little bit scarred off the back of Koulibaly. I'm not sure, but for me, I think Chelsea absolutely have to go and act and have to bring in a centre back. That I've told everyone 100 times that I think Bastoni with an Italian manager, that conversation should be happening 100%. I think Maresca should be on the phone. But actually, when you look at it, why would he leave Inter Milan? But why not? It's worth a try. I know full well that Chelsea could probably pay bigger and better wages than what Inter Milan potentially would be able or willing to do. Jonathan Tah. Look, Jonathan Tah's a strange one for me. Every time I've watched him, I've actually not rated him too much. So I don't know whether or not he'd be good enough. I don't know how much adapting it would take for him to come to the Premier League. I think that's the one bonus with someone like Marc Guéhi is in the Prem, he's been okay. When I look at Premier League defenders that could be available for like a step up, there really isn't too many that I look at and think Chelsea's a step up above that club, and would they come? There really isn't. I looked at someone like Sven Botman. I think Newcastle to Chelsea. I think Chelsea is a step up on Newcastle in terms of stature of the club and where these owners want this team to go. But I don't think Sven Botman's reliable enough. I think he's had a lot of injuries. I think someone like Fabian Schär's a really good centre back, but he is actually a little bit too old. And then I go through at the table and I think there really isn't many others that are that outstanding. The one player that I think for me that may be tempted if you wanted a January signing would be like Dean Howson at Bournemouth. I think he looks like a really good player, but I've actually got a feeling that there's bigger things on the cards for him, and I think Real Madrid may be looking at a player like him because I think he looks fantastic. I think Murillo's great, by the way. Don't get me wrong, I think Murillo's great, but right now I actually think Forest are on the trajectory to go and get European football, and I just don't see him leaving. As are Bournemouth, really. Bournemouth in the lower European competitions are definitely going to be there or thereabouts at the end of the season to fight after 20 games. They've been really good. So that would be an interesting one. Striker-wise, look, I'm at the stage now where we spoke about it a lot in the summer, but I would take Osimhen. I would happily, with open arms, welcome him into this Chelsea side. And I would have in the summer. I think for 5 or 6 game weeks this season, I felt like actually that we probably don't need him. But now looking at everything again, I'd probably take him. I think this could be a good addition. I think the fee would be smaller now than what it was. I think Napoli are probably looking at him playing for Galatasaray. I think in every extra game that he's there, he's actually going to drop in value because the hype just disappears. But for me, yeah, this is one I'd absolutely entertain now. I think he'd be a player that, I mean, actually we should have got that over the line in the summer no matter what it cost. And I think what happens, right, seriously, is if you leave yourself short in the summer, you have to be aware that you're going to spend more in January if those problems do arise that you were concerned about. And you've just got to be willing to spend. I don't think we're in a position that is comfortable enough to go, oh yeah, we didn't sign him in the summer, but don't worry, we'll be top 4 by the time we get round to the end of the season. Nah, it don't work like that. I think other Premier League teams right now are in better form than Chelsea, and their trajectory is kind of starting to overtake Chelsea. And I think we need to act. We need to bring in a striker in this January window if we're serious as a club, and they're serious about ambition of getting back into the Champions League. And for the club's finances as a whole, we need to be back in Champions League football. If we're not there next season, look, I think that's risky. I really, really do. Look, Gyökeres, I definitely wouldn't turn that one down. I think he'd be an interesting player. I'd love to see what he was capable of doing in the Prem. Liam Delap, look, I think Liam would be good. I'm not sure I see him leaving in Jan, but Ipswich to Chelsea is definitely a step up. It screams Chelsea. It screams Joe Shields. Why not? I'd be pretty interested to see what he was capable of doing. But for me, yeah, I would really like to see Chelsea be a little bit ballsy there and go and make something happen with a striker and sort of say, look, Jackson, we really like you. We've given you the opportunity. You've done okay. You've shown that there's a spell there where you've been fantastic, but you've also shown that inconsistency is still part of your game. You know what it's like at the top level of European football. The squad's going to give you challenges. He's coming in. And you go in and you sign a player that is big news, and they're a good striker, but they are at the same time a profile that Chelsea needs. And I think that's really important, that if you're going to back Maresca and you're going to ask him, and you ultimately want a manager that plays in the way that Maresca does, you have to go and ask him what type of striker he wants. You have to. Because does he want a Jamie Vardy type striker that worked for him at Leicester? Like, what does Maresca want as a striker? That's what I'm not sure on. I agree, by the way, with Delap, but I think what Delap does is push up Jackson's level. Hear me out on this. Jackson's downturn in form has happened since Nkunku, it all come out that he wasn't a striker. Since people started saying publicly, Maresca, that Nkunku wasn't viewed as a striker, I think Jackson got a little bit comfortable, a little bit not concerned, not looking over his shoulder, much like Chelsea did, actually. We're talking about title races when we really should have been worrying about beating teams in relegation battles. So a real area for me that I don't think should be overlooked this summer, this January transfer window, because I like Mark Gee. I think he's a good player, but I think we saw he's probably not going to be able to do enough in a Premier League team right now. And I think that concerns me. And just to wrap it up, does anyone have any other areas that they'd like Chelsea to strengthen in the January transfer window coming up? Because I think there are areas. There's areas of discussion. I think I look at a goalkeeper as a really important sort of player to bring in, but I just don't think that's going to happen in January. And I also think that there's something to be said about adding more goals to this team, not just from a striker and not just Cole Palmer. I think actually you want to spread that load a little bit more, and I think if you could find that elsewhere, that would be really, really, really beneficial. And I don't know whether that's you improve the wingers that we've got in Pedro Neto and in Sancho to be putting a better output in terms of goals, or do you add one more player into this team that's really capable of scoring goals? Obviously, Enzo Fernandez was showing that he was starting to chip in, and a couple of players, Cucurella, Casado, they've chipped in with the odd goal here and there. I think what was so good for Chelsea in recent years was, and it's been a while now, but it was so good, was what our fullbacks were capable of doing going forwards. And I really think that's very limited now in Gusto. And Cucurella obviously is scored a couple of goals, but I think when you realise what Reece James and Ben Chilwell and players like Marcus Alonso gave us in years gone by, that is a real asset if you've got a fullback capable of influencing games going forwards. Look, Neto's a weird one, isn't it? I think he's a fantastic player on the eye, and he is really good, but does he fall into the João Phoenix category a little bit? Would he have better GA if you had a more consistent striker that he could deliver the ball to with quality? One thing I'll say, right, and hear me out on this, and I'm seeing it a little bit too much with Chelsea at the moment for the type of squad we have. we're really working on crossing the ball from almost like the half space. And I don't have a picture to show you, but I'm going to try and just quickly find one. But I really think we're making some crosses from some areas, but I don't know who we're crossing to. And I feel like it's really becoming... Matt, good to have you in here. Good to have everyone in here. If you haven't already, make sure to smash a like. We're having a good chat about where Chelsea are at. But what I'm noticing more and more, and I haven't got a clip. It's not a minute that springs to mind exactly, but I've watched for it in either highlights and previous games. Like I said before, by the way, I don't know if Chelsea fans know this, but all of our previous games, full length, the whole match is available on Chelsea's website about a day, 2 days after the game. So well worth a look if you want to like rewatch the game or see more of it and just go over it tactically. But there's a period where we're making these crosses when we feel like there's no other option. We cross the ball and it's literally to no one. And for me, I look at Maresca and I think, what are you trying to do? Crosses are to Cucurella. No, I hear you on that, but not all the time these crosses going back post. Like, it's not all the time. Like, sometimes they're going into against big defences and we've got real small players in there. Real small players. And I just think that is something for me that is really wasteful. And it's a tactic that I don't see making that much sense for Chelsea with the current profile of players that we have. Very, very concerning. We'll see what happens, but Chelsea are in a real sort of tricky spot of form at the moment. We've got the FA Cup. I'm sure we'll navigate that all right, and then it's going to be after that I think is it Bournemouth? Is it Bournemouth? I'm not sure. Can't remember the next Prem game. Could be Bournemouth, but I do know within the next 4 fixtures, I think Manchester City are going to be in a very, very, very uncomfortable position for Chelsea fans. It's either going to be above us or right on our coattails. And that's something I thought we probably got away from this season with their obvious drop in form and our ability to win football matches. But that's really changed in the recent thing. No, hear what I'm saying, by the way. We lack height up top in the attack. Yeah, I completely agree. I think this Chelsea team is not built to be having that amount of crosses delivered with the type of profile player that we have. Matt, I agree. I'd rather that player cut back onto their foot to cross if they're doing that, which they normally do in Sancho or in the fullbacks, actually, if they're overlapping or something like that. I'd rather these players try and work shooting opportunities or something a little bit more creative than forcing a cross to most of the time to a goalkeeper's head or a goalkeeper's hands or defender's head. And I think that's really wasteful. And I think that's something Chelsea need to look at and think, why are we doing that? Or do they have plans that actually someone's going to be coming in who really suits that type of play and they're on their way and we're getting this team ready to deliver those crosses and then someone comes in, plug and play. But I'm not sure. Very, very random sort of tactic and idea I've seen creeping into this Chelsea team, and I don't really know why, to be honest with you. Who would you play in the midfield in the FA Cup game? I think you rotate. I think players like Dewsbury Hall will probably be given a run out. Players like, I would have said Casadei, but I actually think he probably is he's going to be moving away. But I think players like that, Josh probably plays, doesn't he? And a couple of other players that have been on the fringes probably get some minutes, and Kunku will obviously play. Midfield, though, I'm a little bit unsure. You might see Lavia, but that's not a guarantee, by the way. And then you're risking it playing Caicedo and Enzo. This is why I hear what people are saying about definitely bringing in another centre-back for sure. I think that could be something that would be important. Centre midfielder. Defence, I mean, look, actually, in general, our squad is looking a little bit slim. A little bit, with some injuries that have been creeping. João Felix was, honestly, me and Charlie were saying this yesterday. Yesterday? I can't remember. Yeah. I can't remember what day it was. I was talking to Charlie about this, but yeah, João Felix really, really, really looking like a transfer that is just so pointless. So pointless. I honestly think Chelsea should have been... Like, I don't know what happened with Samuel Marodian, but something really went wrong there, because his profile is so much more suited to Chelsea than what João Felix was, which is really concerning. I don't know, you can probably tell, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well, but some of Chelsea's actions in terms of recruitment have been so baffling that they are so hard to make sense of why the way we've dealt with some transfers and players in and players out would have ever happened. There's no way we can be sat here right now after banishing Trevor Chalobah thinking, hang on, we banished this defender and actually things have got so bad that we might need him back. I mean, that for me is real mismanagement, and I just don't understand why or how that's been allowed to happen. Enzo hasn't got her, and unfortunately the way the board want to work is they don't want a manager having a say. They don't want that, because Pochettino had his say and was having a say on players that he wanted to keep at Chelsea and he didn't, and it ultimately led to a breakdown in relationship, and they ultimately moved him on. And look, I'm starting to get the feeling that under these sporting directors, this chaos is probably not going to go, which is really concerning for me, because at times I think we've said, oh, look, maybe we should give them a bit of credit. They have really built something. But at the same time, I'm not entirely sure. I've definitely not got 100% trust in them at the moment. I think they've done some things that are really good and I think will eventually be beneficial. But at the same time, I'm not entirely sold on the project or the process right now, because I just think there's too many issues after how much money's been spent. I think it's that simple. These issues, for me, should have been eradicated at $1 billion. The fact of the matter is, Chelsea have parted company with over $1.5 billion since the new ownership have been in place. Whether or not we've sold people or not, it doesn't really matter. That could have been profit, but in fact, it's just cutting down on net spend, which is... I don't know. Look, too many cooks in the kitchen is a great shout on this one. I've said it for a long time now. The best clubs and the top clubs in football work best with limited amount of people. Look at, if you haven't before, I actually suggest it's worth doing. Go and look at Real Madrid and look how they work. And they're obviously the pinnacle, right? But I think they've got like 4 or 5 people that have any say throughout the whole first team to owner. I think that's it. Maybe less. Chelsea, you just know there's conversation after conversation after conversation after conversation before it gets anywhere. And then when it gets to a sporting director, there's 2 of them. So they could not agree. Look, I'm just not sure. Chelsea, Dan, what are you saying? Chelsea, it is true that Chelsea are not a trust the process team by history, but unfortunately I think under the new ownership and this new model that's been put in place, that's what's going on. And it's as fans to say, like, look, if it's not good enough, it's not good enough. But we got to see. I think that is suggesting that things don't correct themselves. And I think just with how things have been at the beginning of this season, I think it might be a little bit too early to write off Maresca and this squad of players. But I do think both would massively be helped by additions in January. I really think that. So look, let me know your thoughts. If you haven't already, smash a like on the video. I've got to shoot. We'll get more content out, lives, pre-records, whatever it is. I'll have stuff out on the channel throughout January, especially if there's news with players breaking. I jump on TikTok lives every now and then as well. So if you're on TikTok, make sure to go and drop me a follow. We're on the road to 2.5 over there. And that's a great place to be just for like a quick chat if you're not on that already. I'll see you all in a bit. Absolute pleasure chatting to you. Appreciate you all tuning in as always. And I will see you in the next one.